Welcome to the creative community. I'm your host, David Starkey, and my guest this time is poet Bob Krut. Robert Krut, I should say.
Either is fine,
Yes.
that's fine, yes.
It's great to have you on the show. You are a fixture of poetry in Santa Barbara, but also in Los Angeles.
Yes,
Yeah.
I hope so.
Well, you live in LA and you teach here at UCSB.
Yes, I've been teaching at UCSB since 2003 and have lived in LA the entire time, so I'm back and forth.
What's that commute like?
The short answer is it's great.
Yeah.
I'm used to it at this point.
Is it a daily one?
No, thank goodness.
Okay.
It's Tuesday, Thursday. When I took the job in Santa Barbara, I knew we were going to live in LA, and I very warmly asked the office if I could be on a 2-day schedule. That would be great, and they've never taken me off of that.
That's really nice. Yeah.
And I leave before the sun comes up, so I get to watch the sun come up over the ocean on the
yeah,
drive,
right.
and then I'm done before rush hour and I head home. So
wow.
yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
It's not too bad.
Well, we're glad to have you here in Santa Barbara and on the show.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking a lot about your most recent book, Oh, Oblivion, here. And this is your 5th book of poetry.
It is.
I'm always curious how people became whatever they become. How did you become a poet?
Well, I love that. I love a question like that. It's, I think like a lot of kids, I loved poems when I was really little. I remember having my Shel Silverstein books and going through those.
Yeah.
But then by the time I was in high school, I was obsessed with music, which I know you are as well. Yeah. And it really is a direct line from falling in love with Bob Dylan, like when I was maybe 15, to the Beats. Yeah. And then Bruce Springsteen, a New Jersey kid.
I just wrote a book about him.
Yeah, that's right. And he turned me on to Flannery O'Connor and Raymond Carver.
Sure, yeah.
And so those two musicians kind of led me to literature. And once I discovered the Beats and started reading O'Connor and Carver, it was kind of off to the races from there.
Now, to get from those early influences to your poetry, that's still a long and winding road.
Yes, yeah. Well, I was lucky when I went to, I did my undergraduate work at James Madison University in Virginia. I had great teachers there, and I got turned on to Dennis Johnson, and which I think a lot of middle-aged guys now are obsessed with Dennis Johnson, but for a good reason.
Yeah,
I think.
He's a great writer.
Yes, and Johnson was the first person who I saw who could meld what the Beats were doing with kind of the romanticism, the visionary work, and the more direct approach of like a Carver. And his poetry in particular meant a lot to me. And once I fell in love with that, I was moving forward. I knew I wanted to go to grad school, and I went to Arizona State University for my MFA program. And that was a great program that really put an emphasis on the writing. And just spending time. I got to spend 3 years with the poems. It turned me on to a lot of new writers that I hadn't seen before, both on the faculty and in what they were exposing me to. And soon after that, I started my teaching career. And of course, as a lot of people know, it still was 10 more years until I had a book published. But that was kind of the path that I was taking.
Yeah. Now, so at UCSB, I take it you are teaching expository prose, right?
I'm very lucky. I have a mix of, so half of my position is in the writing program. Okay. That's where I started. And in the writing program, for people who aren't familiar with UCSB, the English literature writing world is split into 3 segments. There's the English department, the writing program, and the College of Creative Studies. So I started in the writing program teaching expository writing. And then that moved into also teaching creative nonfiction there. And then I began teaching also in College of Creative Studies. And there I teach poetry. So half of my classes are poetry and the other half are typically creative nonfiction now with the writing program. But I still do, at least once a year, I always like to have a first-year composition class because I love having the first-year students.
Well, that's been one of the themes of my own career, is trying to kind of find those connections between that first-year composition class and creative writing, poetry writing. Do you see any connections as someone who's doing that?
I see connection in that all kinds of writing is connected in that. It's just a way to express yourself, and I try to find those connections. When I teach first-year writing, I do bring poetry in. So we'll use poems as kind of a doorway into the more traditional essays that they're writing there, which is a fun way for me to channel that energy, but I think it offers them something unique as well.
Yeah. Well, let's go to Oh, Oblivion. Before you read a poem, tell us a little bit about the getting the book together.
Well, the book came together over the past maybe 2 or 3 years. I'm very lucky in that this is the third book that I'm working with Codhill Press, which is an imprint of SUNY Press. And it's rare, like we were talking about before we started recording, it's rare for a poet to have a press that they get to work with time and time again. Right. So after the last book, they were very open to seeing another one. So that took a little bit of the pressure away. So the past couple of years, I've just been working on new poems. And usually for me, about halfway through, I start to see the shape that it wants to take. And I see what it wants to be about. I know that sounds touchy-feely, what it wants to be about, but it does reveal itself, right? And when I get to maybe about 25 poems, print them all out, lay them across the bed, and just start to kind of feel it out. It's a nice tactile way of seeing what's there. And I did that about 2 years ago, and I thought, okay, this is what the book is meant to be about. And then that gives me the motivation and the energy to complete it. And
so you're kind of filling in empty spaces in a way?
In a way, yeah. And also, I try not to get caught up in, and I know other people work differently than this, but for me, I try not to get caught up in what is the theme of the book going to be, or what am I trying to write about, until I see what has been coming out subconsciously.
And then there it is.
Right? And then there it is. Yeah. And I could see with these poems, they were different than the last book or two. And then that put my mind in a headspace of where I wanted to go with the rest of the poems. So about 2/3 of it had been done, and then the final third started to kind of come together from there.
Well, let's have a poem.
Sure. Well, and interestingly, the poem that I'm going to read, it's the first time I ever tried this, where I had the entire manuscript, and I wanted to write one more poem that would start the manuscript. Okay. There's a lot of poems in this book that are written as toasts. And I thought, well, how could I start the book in that manner? So this is the very first poem in the book, and this is called Oblivion's Desk. Prayer or toast, don't know which I'm writing at this hour. I shake vermouth into holy water, raise the cocktail to the ghosts of the past who shuffle their way out of the room, holding my address book and driver's license, while the ghosts of the future shave their fingerprints to tissued eyelids, drop them into my drink. Prayer or toast, a coming or going, an exit, an entrance. The floor drops out. Terminology just words lit by a winking light bulb, and the wind in this room can't be identified or stopped. So that's the first poem in the book.
What's the commonality between a prayer and a toast?
An invocation, an opportunity to celebrate, hopefully. I think a prayer is something when we're in need, and a toast is something when we want to celebrate.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, and those lines kind of suture themselves together, I think, a lot,
Yeah, so that does feel like a really strong way to enter the book itself.
Thanks. I had never tried that before, and I sat there with a pile of poems, and I thought, I want one to just start this. And I brewed coffee, and I sat down, and I wrote it.
Well, when I'm reading your poems, they move really quickly from thought to image, from one place to the next. Although, I mean, there's clearly a coherence, but how is that happening in your mind? Are you just kind of letting things go? How does that one connection go to the following connection?
Sure. You know, it's. I think a lot of it is letting go and letting yourself not be in control. A lot of times when I'm writing, I try to just release any thought of self-censorship and just let it all out, and then I start to peel back what doesn't make sense or what does, because I want the poems to have that sense of floating between worlds and between image and idea. Too much idea, it gets boring, or it floats into the ether. Too much image. Well, I guess you can't have too much image, really, but
you start to lose the idea.
Yeah, exactly. I like everything. To me, is about tension between two things. So the image and the idea pulling on each other is kind of where it leads.
Yeah. Well, I know you don't have one paged out, but I'd love to hear another poem from Oblivion before we go to earlier ones. Could
sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Could we hear something?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's actually a nice bookend. I'm going to read the last poem from the book then. And this was the poem that when I talked earlier about, I feel like it's starting to take shape. I wrote this poem, and that felt like the tipping point. Like, oh, this is where the book is meant to go. So this is the last poem in the book, and this is Oh Amnesia. Cut out the person who told you to write for ghosts, who tried to tie sandbags to every line of poetry, who had you looking over your shoulder, paralyzed by gravity each time you held a pen. Release the pollution from the chamber you're standing in, let it rush with the ticker tape wind of the world's going away party. The ghosts aren't watching, hate to say. They're often worlds we can't even fathom. We're nothing more than a dream they can hardly reassemble as they let a star's gold warm their shoulders while they scratch their backs on the rings of Saturn. Good night. We won't worry about you at all. We'll write if we need you.
Well, it's great. It's kind of an Ars Poetica at the very end, isn't it?
I think so. I think so, yeah.
What are you reading as you're writing all this stuff? I mean, who are your go-to writers, or what's on your book table right now?
On my book table right now, I have two piles on the book, the bookcase. I have new books and old books that I want to revisit. So the newest books that I've been reading, I love. There's a poet, Rivka Clifton, who has a new book, which is really pretty wonderful. I also, and then in the older books, I've been going back to Tracy K. Smith's Life on Mars a lot. I guess that's not really old, that's in the weird middle age. But I love her work so much and brings out a lot. And then if I go even older than that, I'm always calling upon Elizabeth Bishop, I always go back to. So these are all the kind of the voices that are kind of coming in a lot. In Philip Lamantia, I also go back to a lot for the surrealism and to kind of give me the encouragement to go down that path. If I want to
so the Beats being this early influence,
yes,
they're still echoing in your...
Yes, oh, absolutely. And it's funny because I didn't know his work particularly well at the time. I mean, it's like everybody who's just starting to learn. As Ginsberg, I was obsessed with, and it was the first time I went to City Lights when I moved to California, which of course was an overwhelming experience.
Life-changing experience.
Yes, you know, you read about it your whole life, and then walking into City Lights the first time, and I bought his selected poems that time, and it's been one I keep going back to a lot.
Yeah. So let's go back. Let's move back a little bit, and maybe we'll kind of finish with one more poem from Oh Oblivion. But we're gonna magically go to Watch Me Drink Ghosts. Tell us about this book.
So this book was written, you know, I almost hesitate to say it because I think it's reductive to call it a COVID book because, you know, the people always do that, but it was written entirely during lockdown. Early on in that process, I realized I needed structure to kind of keep my sanity as we move through. So I tried to write starting in about April of 2020, I sat down and tried to write something every day, and after a year, I felt like I had enough poems of what I wanted to do with this book, and so this one actually came faster than some of the other ones, which was a strange feeling because we labor over work for so long, and luckily going back to the idea of the great feeling of working with the press over and over again, they were open to the work and were ready to just put it out when it was ready, which was nice.
Well, as someone who does read a lot of poetry books, I've noticed that last year and this year, there are a lot of COVID pandemic lockdown books coming out because that's how long it takes for a book to, to get from the writer's desk to our bookshelf. Is there anything special about that period that is kind of, you know, affected the poems that you have?
I think, you know, looking back on it, I think that, and what I hope is that the poems, you know, stand up without that kind of layer on top of them. But what it did allow is just the stillness of being in the house. I mean, I would trade it all if it hadn't happened. But but the stillness of being in the home, not leaving the house really, other than to take a walk around the neighborhood, and just what happens when you're in the same place every day, and what do you see, and what's coming out. You stare at the same tree day after day after day. What do you see?
You really get to
in
know that
tree?
tree.
Yeah. And who are the people walking around your neighborhood? I just remember, I love our neighborhood, and it's a very communal sort of place. But because no one was on any kind of time schedule, you would just see somebody walking their dog at 2:00 in the morning.
Sure.
And because why not? So it just, everything about the world seemed to be as surreal as I always imagined it would be. So
it's interesting because I think a lot of the poets I've been reading have sort of that attitude. For me, it was a horrifying, terrifying.
Yes.
Like society is going to collapse.
Yes.
I felt a great deal of anxiety,
yes.
but I feel like a lot of poets have found that moment of stillness in there.
Yeah. I think you needed to find that moment of stillness because it was such an anxious time. I mean, I was constantly, worried about my parents,
right.
Or my in-laws, or stressed about people we don't even know, or just the state of the world, and watching what was happening. So taking the time, and myself, I was worried about myself too,
Sure,
obviously, but taking the time in that stress and that anxiety to just center yourself and to write every day was helpful.
Let's hear a poem from the
book.
Sure.
This one, I actually had to do research for this one, which I don't usually do, which was I started with the image of when someone holds a knife and they do the in between their fingers, and I didn't know what the word for that was, and I discovered it's called pin finger.
Oh, okay.
So that was the research I did for this one, and actually going off of what you just said, this is called the anxious lever of lowering sky. Fear is a blade held in a lung. The sky lowers an inch each night. Play pin finger till dawn, you have 10. Keep sticking your thumb in a socket, electrical or eye, it's all the same. You walk through the room like an aspirin. Sleep is pointless when day is night. A lump of ground rises to make your sofa. When you breathe, you create the clouds. The clouds are a loose brain of lightning. That is not something to celebrate. You did all of this and nothing. Take credit or don't. Eat praise like porridge. Drink anger like poison. Both leave you full, exhaling sky. A knock at the door, but the moon covers your mouth like a mask.
So if you're just joining us, Robert Krut reading from Watch Me Trick Ghost. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, a fun one, yeah.
Yeah, but your poems, and you have a witty sense of humor, but they're pretty darn intense.
Yeah, yeah. I try to, it's always that fine line, and going back to that idea of tension. It's like you don't want it to be so dark that no light comes through.
Right.
So I try to infuse it with either a little bit of hope or a throwaway line that could be a chuckle or something. I've done readings where the poem's so dark and intense, and then there's a line that's kind of humorous, and you hear one or two kind of laughs in the back, and you're like, great, yes, yeah. So.
But you're wanting to write about some really serious things. I mean, that not every poet finds that as their topic.
Yeah, the poetry that I love. I mean, there's so much poetry, understatement, in the world, to enjoy. I love poems that are lighter or not lighter, but explore topics that are bathed in light and warmth, and it seems that the path that I've been going down, it doesn't feel like a natural fit maybe for the poems, but who knows what's next?
Who knows what your next book's
yes.
Well, we've got about 8.5 minutes left.
Great.
Let's go back in time and go to our.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this was this is my third book, and this one, this is what started my relationship with Cod Hill Press. Through their award series, the great poet Pauline Ukmanowicz selected this book, and she passed away sadly before the book came out. Wow. Yeah, it was really, but she spent so much time with me on the manual right before the book came out. So this book is always pretty special because it was a wonderful experience working with her. So I thought I'd read
We're talking about the Now Dark Sky.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Setting us all on fire.
Yes, which is a mouthful of a title.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine convinced me, just
Go
take a
for
big
it.
swing, just do it. So I thought, and actually what we were just talking about, this one is, I think, a warmer poem, and this is one of Pauline's favorites in the manuscript, and this is the last poem in this book. And this is repeat and again repeat together. Each moment of the day drops straight from the sky as a sliver, dropping in a vertical line, lodging itself into our skin, revealing the pure darkness that hid behind the blue and cloudy mural above to leave thin, translucent spikes sticking out from our arms, our legs. And as the curtain above turns to black with the absence of time, we lie here, backs on grass, dew climbing up and over our thighs. If I remove your needles, will you remove mine? Take your time. We will pull each out, breathe on the spots left behind, and put them in a satchel. We will carry that bag every day, and every day gather up more, and every day wind up in darkness again.
Oh, nice. You know, we were talking to, this is your third book with Caudill, SUNY, and I'm also the publisher and editor of a small press, Gunpowder Press, here in Santa Barbara.
Great press. Yeah.
What does it take to get a book of poems out into the world so that your publisher will want to have you come back and do it again? Or what sort of promotions are you doing?
You know, it's always, none of us love doing promotional work, right? It's embarrassing, and it's kind of, you know,
especially for people of our age, I think it's really embarrassing.
Oh, it is. It is. Like, have you seen my Instagram account? But it is. I do use social media. I use Instagram.
Okay.
I try to reach out to journals that have published me before to see if they have an interview series, if they're interested. And this time I've been very lucky that a handful of places were interested in doing interviews, which is helpful. Doing readings. The last book I did a lot of readings, and then this time I kind of just did two main. I did one in New York last month, and then I did one in Los Angeles as well. And it's just word of mouth makes a big difference too. You'd be surprised. Well, not you wouldn't be surprised, but you might be surprised that you know, people want to read poems. They just don't have the opportunity to do so a lot. So reaching out to people that you think maybe haven't read a book of poetry before, and then they tell their friends, and then they tell their friends, and just being open to whatever comes along.
And when you're reading, are you finding that there are people who like maybe never been to a poetry reading?
All the time. And a lot of my friends too, who are artists in other disciplines, will say, I haven't been to a poetry reading since I was in college, or you know, I haven't been to an event like this, and people enjoy it, you know, and I was really moved, or when at both of these readings, I was able to handpick who read with me, which was kind of nice. And so many of my friends said, that person who read in front of you was incredible. Where can I find their book? Right. So I think that readings can be a good way to get people on board too.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a small endeavor, poetry, in that it makes no money.
Oh, no.
But, so we're sort of all in it together. You know? I mean, I feel there's maybe more community than there is in some of the other literary genres.
I think there is, you know, there's something that brings people together when you know you're really in it for just sharing the work. Yeah. There's no, you're right. None of us are going to get rich off of this.
Alas.
That's right. So it's really about, you know, the community that builds with everybody. So,
could we have one more poem from Oh Oblivion, your new book?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So if you're just joining us, Robert Krut is reading from Oh Oblivion, his book out this year. And what are we going to hear?
Well, you know what? I'm going to read, this wouldn't be one that I would have thought to have read, but this is the one that both readings, people came up to me afterwards and said, that was kind of an interesting poem. I like that. So I'll end with this one, and this is the one my dad talked to me about too. So I'll read this. This is called The Cryptid.
Okay.
The cryptid feeds on the bark of a dead tree, reveals the boned limbs beneath. The mouth of the cryptid is a bracelet of teeth. The cryptid waits patiently for your wrist. Drinks blood thinking it wine, drinks wine thinking it dreams. Its eyes are tattooed globes. The cryptid sees through 1,000 eyes hidden by fur. The cryptid watches by not watching, merges with wolves in the night to create one wise animal. The cryptid knows your name, knows how to drive your car, but chooses not to. The cryptid carves its own name in discarded mason jars, drinks water, spits kerosene, feels its fur lift near electrical towers. Knows how to see through thick vine. The cryptid is vine, wolves or leaf. The cryptid feeds off one rat, then frees the other. Its own rationale will suffice. The cryptid doesn't want you asking its rationale. The cryptid knows how to tattoo. The name of its mother is tattooed along a hind leg. Wishes its fangs were jewelry to wear like a collar. Waits for you to light a fire, will light a fire if you don't. The cryptid has seen a human-sized spider, has seen a hawk with a human face. The cryptid sees a wolf reflected in your kitchen window, believes humans are a hallucination. The cryptid will eat us all because we are not real. Believes devouring the illusion will free itself. Will keep you locked in your homes. The cryptid is right, believes the vision. Keeps time by your footsteps at morning coffee. Wolves are the vision, you are the alarm clock. The cryptid has your skin beneath its fur. The cryptid is fur, the cryptid is bone. The cryptid will sharpen its teeth on your bones, never realizing they are its own.
Creepy.
Yeah, creepy. I was like, do I pick a weird one or? Yes. And I know they were probably running out of time, so I tried to read a little more quickly.
No, I love that. I did want to ask you sort of in 30 seconds, 45 seconds,
Sure.
what piece of advice you would give to aspiring poets?
The oldest advice in the book is just read everything and don't lock yourself into one way of thinking. I think a lot of poets, myself included, I think, I had years probably when I was younger where I thought, this is what a poem is, this is the way I should write. And I was shutting out voices that would have been really interesting to explore. So I feel like just now I'm catching up with that. So be open to everything and don't ever become dogmatic in your approach. I think it's a big piece of advice I like to give my students.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. I'm going to start taking it myself. Okay, yeah. Well, Bob, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so
much. Love hearing your poems.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Creative Community is a production of TVSB. I'm your host, David Starkey, and we'll see you next time.